Good morning. Welcome to this place of comfort and challenge, of the familiar and the surprising. I'm Dave Lloyd. I'm a member of the church, and I'll be leading the service today. Megan Griffin is your worship associate. Our music is led by Jamie Pastman, and we are favored today by our choir, the Celebration Singers, led by Julia Beckman.
If you are new here or visiting, please join us for coffee and snacks downstairs after the service. Grab a green mug so that we know to greet you. There is always a lot going on around the church, and you can read all about it in News and Notes, which arrives in your inbox every Friday. If you would like to receive News and Notes, you can go to the church's website, www.hinsdaleunitarian.org. Click on the Unitarian.org. Click on the Connect button on the top of the home page, or go to the welcome table in the living room and sign up in the back. This Wednesday, there are 2 events of note. During the day, there is a webinar called Faith in Food, Individual and Collective Responsibility in Food Practices. The webinar is co-sponsored by the UU Animal Ministry and other faith groups. It is online, starts at 2:30, and the registration is found in News and Notes. And on Wednesday night, our own Green Sanctuary Committee is hosting guest speaker Eric Wilson, a senior engineer at the National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden, Colorado, talking about his experience in installing a high-efficiency heat pump in his own home and other ways to increase your residential energy efficiency. Eric is the son of our own Marion Hannah Wilson and conducted an energy audit at UCH, which ultimately led to installing solar panels and mini splits here at the church. This webinar starts at 7 p.m. and Zoom instructions are in the News and Notes. Next Saturday, February 4th, we'll see a habitat restoration workday at Bemis Woods, a mile from here on Ogden Avenue, starting at 9 a.m. Stay tuned for more information about this opportunity later in the service. Last Sunday, a group of about 8 people met to brainstorm some plans for meeting and greeting Reverend Beth and helping her to get to know us. She plans to attend as many meetings as possible, but it seemed natural that any information summary that we could give her of each of us would be helpful. Darren suggested we use a Google Drive brief survey to collect information such as your name, children's names, their ages, town you live in, how many years you've called this church your home, and any activities you're involved in, and what it is that attracts you here. Is it the message of the sermon? Is it the music? Is it the fellowship of like-minded folks? And the activities that you're involved in? So watch your Friday email, that News and Notes, for more information. When we launch the survey, which you can do at home with a live link, or here at a laptop, or by filling out a hard copy that we will input into the spreadsheet. Be advised that we hope to take photos to collate with your information. So spiff up and step up and help us be ready to welcome Reverend Beth in just 5 more weeks. And lately, we've been recognizing and thanking church members whose service to the church has made a big difference. Today, we are recognizing Jean Schaefer, who we get to see most Sundays, along with Alex Dvorak, making our sound and video work. And also, this past year, putting together PowerPoint presentations for our guest ministers so that we can always count on a quality product. And Jean is active in important causes and committees, including Animal Ministry and Green Sanctuary. And he's cool and funny as well. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Alex. We light our chalice, the symbol of our church and denomination, with these words. Please join in saying them. They're on the screen. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share.
Now I'd like to invite all the young or young at heart. Doesn't seem like we have any small kids in the room, so that means I get to stand rather than sit on the floor. Today's story is, what do you do with a problem? I don't know how it happened, but one day I had a problem. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. I really didn't like having a problem, but it was there. Why is it here? What does it want? What do you do with a problem? I thought. I wanted to make it go away. I shooed it. I scowled at it. I tried ignoring it, but nothing worked. I started to worry about my problem. What if it swallows me up? What if my problem sneaks up and gets me? What if it takes away all my things? I worried a lot. I worried about what would happen. I worried about what could happen. I worried about this and I worried about that. And the more I worried, the bigger my problem became. I wished it would just disappear. I tried everything I could to hide from it. I even found ways to disguise myself, but it still found me. And the more I avoided my problem, the more I saw it everywhere. I thought about it all the time. I didn't feel good at all. I couldn't take it anymore. This has to stop, I declared. Maybe I was making my problem bigger and scarier than it actually was. After all, my problem hadn't really swallowed me up or attacked me. I realized that I had to face it. So even though I didn't want to, even though I was really afraid, I got ready and I tackled my problem. When I got face to face with it, I discovered something. My problem wasn't what I thought it was. I discovered it had something beautiful inside. My problem held an opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to learn and to grow, to be brave, to do something. It showed me that it was important to look closely because some opportunities come only once. So now I see problems differently. I'm not afraid of them anymore because I know their secret. Every problem has an opportunity for something good. You just have to look for it. The end. Do we want to sing the Invisible Children out? No. Go in peace. No one is with you. Go. Okay. All right. You're gone. Now let's listen as our choir sings "Things That Never Die" by Lee Dangler, inspired by text from Charles Dickens.
The pure, the bright, the beautiful.
Maybe you've had this experience. You decided to stay up all night in order to watch the sunrise. I've tried this several times in my life and I could never do it. I always doze at some point, but I have succeeded in getting up real early so I could see the sunrise. So imagine that we're in darkness. Breathe deep the gathering gloom. Close your eyes. Imagine that you are in almost complete darkness, waiting for the sun to come up. Imagine that you were in a field or on a hill, maybe next to a ruined old church, waiting for the sunrise. You've staked all your hope and trust on the belief that the prediction is true, that the sun really will rise again. And you're rewarded when the sun peeks over the horizon.
We enter this space bringing with us joys, concerns, challenges, and blessings. If you have something either weighing or dancing on your heart this morning, you are invited to share, come up and share and light a candle. If you wish to say a word or a name or a short phrase to share your intentions, please keep your names, the first names only. You can light a candle and state your intentions.
Good morning, I'm Paula. I lit 2 candles in celebration. Here he is. One is for my birthday boy, Ben, and he turned 16 tomorrow, which I think seems like this really big thing for me for some reason. I don't know, 16 and 18. And then my other son, Alex, was recently accepted to Illinois Institute of Technology. He's also been accepted to North Central. So the next couple of weeks, we have some big decisions to make, but I'm very proud of both of them and all that they've accomplished and just the amazing young men that they are.
Hi, I'm Amira. I'm Amira, and I have a concern. I got an email from a friend of mine this morning. Some of you know her. Her name is Rose. She used to come here, but she moved out of the area recently, and she's going to a different UU church. Anyway, she got into a car accident. Her car is totaled, and her sternum is broken. She says she's having a hard time moving. I just wanted to let you all know, because some of you know her, and we're sending her our thoughts and love.
Hi, I'm Jane. This candle is for Tony Taylor. He was in the hospital last week, and he's now home with his daughter, Philippa, here in Hinsdale. He would appreciate calls or a visit if you call ahead of time.
So sitting next to Ron in the choir, we were delighted to see Jay. I'm going to say the last name. Jay Vancouver is here with us today.
We light these final 3 candles. One's for the joys and sorrows that are too private to share. One for our church community who supports us in our good and hard times. And one for our leaders, that they remember where they live and who they work for.
We can't enlighten the leaders. Now is the time in the service when we invite each other to share our resources to continue the work of this church. Let's say these words together. This church is made up of all of us. It is what we learn together, the work we do together, the fun we have together. It is what we share with one another, with people around us, and with all the world. Thank you in advance for your generosity.
Thank you for your generosity. Now let's listen to Hope is the Thing with Feathers, based on the Reverend Emily Dickinson poem. And the words will be on the screen, I think. Yeah. I turned it off to see them. This past summer, I had a bit of a health scare. I had to spend the night in the hospital because I had a stomach ulcer. So I got it scoped, and by the time they diagnosed it, it was already healing. So I went home and got back to work and life. But the problem was, I had had medical things before, and I would go to the doctor, get fixed up, and then I was fine. But this time, I didn't get better right away. I was weak and unambitious, I would even say depressed, for months. This is one of those things that they say, oh, it reminds you of your own mortality, that we're all going to die. And the idea of being dead
is one I've come to terms with, thanks in great part to this church. But I don't like the idea of getting dead. And I realized that this episode was the beginning of a long, slow slide to decrepitude and decay. That this is the best I'm ever going to feel, and it's all downhill from here. Rodney Dangerfield has a routine where he says, I'm at the age where if I take good care of myself, watch what I eat and drink, get regular checkups, I'm going to get very sick and die. And this was really bothering me. It was plaguing me this summer. That summer we went on vacation and I brought a book by Sasha Sagan titled For Small Creatures Such as We. It's all about rituals for life, for times of the year, daily rituals, life events. Sasha Sagan is the daughter of Carl Sagan, the famous scientist and popularizer of science, who, by the way, is one of my personal heroes. And she is very conscious throughout the book that she has a famous father. She acknowledges that if she weren't Carl Sagan's daughter, this book might not have been published. She says that people come up to her all the time and tell her how much they admire him. People all over the world love Carl Sagan. I'm sure he has billions and billions of fans. And she tells a lot of stories about what she learned and what her father was like. For example, when she was little and she discovered what death was, at bedtime she would often tell her parents, don't forget, don't die. And her mother would say, I promise. And her father, the ever-realist, would say, I'll do my best. So in the book, she has rituals about birthdays and solstice and about death and dying. And you know, sometimes a book comes along that is exactly what you need at that moment in the universe. Here are some things that Sasha Sagan says about death. You and I and everyone we know will die someday. Yes, our species will end or evolve into something unrecognizable to us. Yes, the sun will die. Life on Earth will come to a close, and that's the best case scenario. It's very easy to let that get you down. It's scary, she says. It's depressing. I'm anxious just typing it, but it's real. And this is me. I'm anxious just reading it, but it's real. Here's more. Even though it's not forever, because it's not forever, being alive is a profoundly beautiful thing for which each of us should feel deeply grateful. If we lived forever, it would not be so amazing. It's a miraculous wonder that we have been born at all. Not long after that vacation, in October of last year, our visiting minister was Reverend Michael Dowd, and you might remember he talked about doom, about preparing for a post-doom world. Things are bad, they're not going to get better, and we may as well get used to it. And he invited us to a Zoom meeting to continue the conversation. So I logged on, and my wife Suzanne and some other people. And if we were expecting him to soften the message for the post-conversation, forget it. He doubled down on it. We're screwed. We're doomed. Look at the environment. Climate change is accelerating, and nobody's doing anything about it. The economy is a mess, and the pandemic revealed how fragile things like supply chains and resources are, and there will be a collapse soon. This economy can't sustain itself. And politics. He was talking in October. In this session, he talked about the 5 stages of grief and how we are going through those stages in dealing with all these situations. I've thought about this, and it really makes sense. Take a problem like global climate change. You could apply the 5 stages of grief to politics or the economy, but let's take climate change. The first stage of grief is denial. A lot of us went through denial about climate change. Not denial that climate change is a problem, that's a lie. Denial that the problem was insoluble. We figured, sure, it's a problem, it's getting worse, but the people and the government will step in and fix things. And this was not naive. In the 1970s, pollution was really bad. Remember that cities across the country were covered with a brown haze of smog for days or weeks at a time, sometimes most of the year. Water was polluted. The Cuyahoga River in Ohio caught fire. There was a dead zone in the middle of Lake Erie. And Congress passed the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. President Nixon, Richard Nixon, set up the Environmental Protection Agency, and things got better. Imagine if you had suggested canoeing or kayaking on the Chicago River back then. And people now do it all the time. Or Salt Creek, for that matter. I've kayaked on Salt Creek. I've seen fish and mollusks and small crustaceans all over Salt Creek. And in the 1980s, scientists in Antarctica discovered that there was a hole in the ozone layer. A layer of ozone completely covers the outer atmosphere and protects us from death rays from outer space. And it was just vanishing. The cause was chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, chemicals that react with ozone and destroy it. And they were used in air conditioners, refrigerators, spray cans. So governments around the world, led by the United States of America, made CFCs illegal. And the problem got fixed. The ozone layer is imperfect, but it's way better than it was. So we figured that people would insist on, and government would enact, rules that reduce carbon emissions and would slow up or even reverse global warming. Boy, were we wrong. We didn't take into account how evil big business, including the big oil companies, are. And by evil, I mean knowing that what you're doing is killing people by the millions and continuing to do it, and publishing junk science, lying to the people and to the government to keep your evil business model going. We didn't take into account how corrupt our politicians could be, taking bribes from big business and shutting down any efforts to fix the problem. And we didn't count on how gullible people could be in lapping up the propaganda, so that half the people don't even believe that such a thing exists. So then we went to the next stage of grief, anger. Anger at big business and crooked politicians, and even at our fellow citizens for being so willfully ignorant. Every year, every month, almost every day, there are more stories about how storms are worse, fires are worse and more common, our day-to-day weather patterns are all different. And just like they said, coastal cities are having more flooding, rain patterns are changing, leading to drought or flooding. And whole countries in the Southwest Pacific Ocean are talking about how to keep their country going when the land they occupy isn't there anymore. And nobody's doing a damn thing about it. And then the next step, bargaining. We bargain with nature and with the world. If we just changed to different light bulbs, if we just lowered our thermostats, if we just inflated our tires properly, maybe we could avoid the disaster. Knowing in the back of our minds that nothing we could do would make much difference if the biggest players, big business and government, didn't take the wide-scale action that was necessary. And that has brought us to our current state, depression and despair. Every time you read another story about fires out west, or drought in California, or record heat waves all over Europe, or crops in poorer countries failing for yet another year, or people being flooded out, you want to just throw up your hands and say, oh well. At our discussion with the Zoom discussion we had after that service, someone said, I'm glad my children are grown. And someone said, how do I talk to my grandchildren about this? And you could go through the same analysis with politics or the economy. We said, we denied. We said there's no way this madman can be elected. We got angry about how people could be so toxic that they would vote for somebody who stands for racism and greed and spite. And we tried to bargain. We've heard so many times, let's try to embrace those people. Understand them and meet them where they are, until many of us finally concluded you can't talk to those people. Anyone who supports one of these, not just one, but numerous politicians who stand for hate and divisiveness and against science and courtesy and against the religious values that they supposedly believe in, anyone who supports that is either deeply troubled or a monster. And in November, things turned out a lot better than many people feared, but a lot of those politicians are firmly entrenched in office. And the majority of people in one of our political parties actively do not believe in democracy, in American democracy. Going back to that church service in October, Reverend Michael Dowd was trying to get us through the despair to the fifth step, which is acceptance. Before I talk about acceptance, we're going to take a little break for these words from our sponsors. How you doing? I'm Joe Pulaski. Maybe you went out driving past the forest preserves and seen a bunch of people bent over and cutting down trees and shrubs. Or maybe you've seen big bonfires in the woods and wondered, what's the deal? Or maybe you've walked or ridden down a trail and seen a wall of brush on one side, so thick you can't walk 2-3 feet into the woods. And on the other side, beautiful carpet of wildflowers. As far as the eye can see, you wonder, where'd that come from? Well, you can find out and help out. This next Saturday, February 4th, starting at 9 o'clock at Bemis Woods on Ogden Avenue, between Wolf Road and Atollway. Me and my crew will be cutting invasive brush and trees. We'll have a fire, and we'll be serving hot food, vegetarian and omnivorous. If you're going to go, 9 o'clock on Saturday, you drive into the preserve on Ogden, bear left, drive as far as the parking lot will take you. No experience needed. We bring the tools, we got gloves for everybody. For more information, you can Google Cook County Forest Preserves, click on the volunteer button, or talk to my buddy Dave Lloyd. He's around here somewhere. Thanks a lot.
Good morning. I am here representing the company ROC, Recyclers of Cheese. Here at ROC, we take pride in how we recycle our cheese. I hope that you, and as a consumer of cheese, think about your recycling habits. I do want to point out a few particulars when recycling your cheese. Make sure you have the proper receptacle to place your cheese in. For your hard cheeses, such as cheddar, Gruyere, Gouda, or Parmesan, properly grate, slice, cut, or throw your blue cheese into the recycling container. For your soft cheeses, such as brie, cream cheese, or Roquefort, have your knife or spreader ready to layer the cheese out correctly onto the correct cheese board. Then we have cottage cheese. This is a special this is the styrofoam of cheese. Recycling this cheese is very tough. It is better just to not buy cottage cheese at all and save yourself the hassle of trying to recycle it. If you must buy it, dump it into a hazard-proof bowl.
So hazard-proof, I can't open it.
Wrap it in packing tape. And put it in a Sharps container. Please call our company at 1-800-ROCK-CHEESE and let us know if you will be putting some cottage cheese out on the parkway. We will have our team come separately to collect your cheese. Please limit your cottage cheese recycling to once every few years. Recycling can be done very easily if done correctly and accurately. You can also check out our website at www.recyclecheese.gov to purchase some great products made out of recycled cheese. These beautiful flip-flops. Thank you for listening. How to be cheese conscious, and do us all a favor at recyclers of cheese, and recycle often.
Have a bite, dear.
Oh, thank you.
Wait, it gets worse. It gets worse. Here we go. I don't have any music for this. Hi, I'm Mike the Monarch. Butterflies like me need lots of natural habitat, but invasive plants and farming practices have really cut down on the native plants, including my favorite, milkweed. But I've got friends, people who are restoring natural habitat and making space on their own property for plants that pollinators need. Hey, I hear that this church is working with Homegrown National Park to get people to plant native plants in their yards and even in flower pots and boxes. If you would like to get some information about planting native gardens and maybe get some native plant seeds to start on your own, you should check out a native plant seed exchange at the Brookfield Library. It's coming up in March 25th, that's a Saturday, all afternoon. If you have seeds that you've collected, you can trade them with other gardeners. If you're just getting started, there are folks who know what's what and can give you advice. That's Saturday, March 25th, so you have plenty of time. And you don't need to be a Brookfielder to participate. But I will say that you might want to make an effort to blend in. So I have a few things you can remember so that Brookfield natives don't look at you funny. Could you, yeah, my proboscis don't.
Need some help here?
Yeah. Okay, so don't say Brookfield Zoo. It's like saying, I would like some Chicago. That's fine, you're good. Go back one. Thank you. Don't ruin the bit. Okay. If you say Brookfield Zoo, it's like saying Chicago-style pizza. Everybody knows you're a tourist. It's the zoo. Irish Times, it's called The Times. All right. And trustee and village president Michael J. Garvey, Mike. I was over at the Times. Mike came in. He was talking to somebody about the zoo. It's like that. And not yet. Sebastian's Ale and Whiskey House is that place where the wine bar used to be. You can tell you're in small town America when they give instructions or directions. Turn left where the Tasty Freeze used to be. It weeds out all the non-residents. So watch for further news March 25th and give a butterfly a hand.
It's an inside joke. It's Herbie Hancock butterfly. Well. Wait, who are you?
We are back. Let's be realistic and acknowledge that we live in a world where the climate is changing in ways that will kill millions or billions of people before it gets better. That the economy will suffer huge disruption from which many people will never recover. And big businesses' response is to raise prices so that they can make record profits. We live in a country where children are being shot dead at school on a regular basis, about once a week, and that's just fine. Governors are rounding up some of the most vulnerable people in society, and because they don't fit in, they're loading them onto buses, and shipping them across the country and dumping them off without food, water, or proper clothing.
That's funny.
They're on vacation. And the people who have gained political power, the way they're going to fix things is going after pronouns. Let's acknowledge all that, and let's find a way to accept it. What does the Buddha tell us? There is suffering. There's also happiness, but neither of them are permanent. trying to get what we want and hang on to it and avoid or reject what we don't want inevitably leads to disappointment. There can be an end to suffering if we have the right view, the right intention, we take the right action. As Sasha Sagan says, you and I and everyone we know will die. That's just a fact. And we don't like it, and that causes suffering. Accepting that, what's going to happen, we can resolve to live the best, most meaningful life and appreciate and experience every part so fully that we don't miss anything. Accept that things are screwed up and they're going to get worse. And then you can stop trying to avoid or reject them. Actively picture a future world in which all these evils have come to pass. I'm suggesting that sometime today you set aside a few minutes. Actively picture this future world. You and I are still here, but everything we've heard about and that I've talked about has happened. How are you going to live? What will you and I do in this new world? It will be difficult, but it won't be horrible if we prepare to deal with it. The Stoics in ancient Rome had much the same message. The source of all unhappiness is the desire that the universe be different from what it is. Here are some quotes from Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor and a writer of a short but profound book called Meditations. He was sort of for Stoical philosophy, he was like Carl Sagan for the space program. Does anyone do wrong? It is to himself that he does the wrong. Has anything happened to you? Well, out of the universe, from the beginning, everything that happens has been apportioned and spun out to you. The universe is either a well-arranged universe or a chaos huddled together, but it's still the universe. All things take place by change, and the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things they are and make new ones just like them. To sum up, the Stoics express that the universe is the way it is, and whether we suffer is dependent on how we react to the things in the universe. We can say, I'm afraid of what will happen and fear that I will suffer. Or, I know what will happen and I know it will be bad and I will suffer. Or we can say, things will be bad, very likely, and I can imagine how they will be, both the best and the worst scenario. And I will be here, and I'll be ready, for I know in advance how I will react. These are some of our choices. To sum up even more economically, from one of my other favorite sources of quotations, William Shakespeare, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. If we spend some time imagining just how bad things can get and deciding what our reactions will be, knowing that we don't have the power to change the universe, then when those times get here, we can say, I can't avoid or reject the situation, but I do not have to suffer because I'm the one who decides whether a thing is good or bad. Acceptance does not mean surrender. None of these sources are saying, and I'm not saying, that we give up, throw in the towel, and just let things happen. Here's another quotation from another of my favorite sources, Winston Churchill, who, along with Carl Sagan, is one of my personal heroes. Most people have heard the portion of a speech to Parliament that goes, we will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them in the landing zones. But here's the longer section of that speech with the real meaning in it. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender. And even if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until in God's good time, the new world with all its power and might steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old. Imagine having to tell your government and your people, your country, that their homeland may well end up in a short time subjugated and starving. Accept this possibility, he says, but know that we will never surrender. And if the rest of the world has to carry on the fight, it will. And that was Reverend Michael Dowd's final message. Someone asked, if we accept the things that things will continue to get worse for the foreseeable future, why should we even bother trying to make things better? And his answer was this: even if we can't prevent or avoid the disaster, everything we do to make things better will make the disaster a little less, or make it get over with a little sooner, or make the recovery a little greater. So we should all continue to do the things that we've been doing and find new things. Restore natural habitat, spread native plants for pollinators, recycle cheese, whatever it takes. This leads me to my last quote, and it's from a fly fishing guide who's trying to save native trout populations in American rivers. Her name is Hillary Hutchison. She lives in Montana. And she said, we still try. We try, she said. We're alive right now, and for me, being alive is to try. To that I say, amen. Let's sing a hymn. Please stand in body or spirit and sing hymn number 344, A Promise Through the Ages Rings.
Please join us in these words as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of its truth, the warmth of this community, nor the fire of our commitment. These we carry in all our hearts and share with all the world.
I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do.